Go away, you useless wife who can't even do simple chores. I sat on the floor feeling small and insulted as my mother-in-law glared at me. We have Mauricio and my mom, we don't need you. You always seem unhappy anyway, you're just a burden. My sister-in-law, who never helps around the house, added with disdain. Wait a minute, Mauricio, your mom and sister are being too mean. Before I could say more, even my husband Mauricio sided against me. My mom and sister are right. I don't need a wife who can't manage household chores while working. Plus, I have a younger part-time helper who's much better. Pack your things and go. Mauricio's words hit me hard. They all continued criticizing me, calling me a failed wife. I clenched my fists, feeling anger rise inside me. After all they've taken from me, how dare they? Just wait, I'll make sure you all face the consequences, I thought, but I kept my expression neutral as I looked at the three of them. Fine, I'll leave. The downfall of the family that's been dumping everything on me starts now. I'm Eleanor, 32 years old, and a working wife. Many women work after getting married, and I kept my job at the same company I joined after college because I enjoy it. One morning, while I was getting ready for work, Mauricio asked, Eleanor, can you handle this? Tax season is approaching. He handed me a stack of receipts and invoices. Again? You should manage your own shop's finances, Mauricio said, avoiding eye contact. You know I'm better at this, so please. I married Mauricio 5 years ago. He used to work as a clerk at a restaurant I frequented, and after dating for a while, we decided to tie the knot. Now Mauricio runs his dream cafe, but he leaves tasks like purchasing and accounting to me. As I left for work, my mother-in-law added, Eleanor, let's have Chinese food tonight. Can you get the ingredients ready? No, you can do it when you return. Also, Vivian and the kids are coming this weekend. Make sure to prepare something they'll like. I reluctantly replied before leaving. When we got married, I wanted to live just with Mauricio, but he insisted we live with his mother because he worried about her living alone. So we moved into his large family home. My mother-in-law isn't good at keeping the house tidy, and it was messy when we moved in. She lives on a pension and mostly eats out because she doesn't like cooking. Mauricio always says that housework is a woman's responsibility, so even though I work, I'm stuck doing all the chores for the whole family. On top of that, my sister-in-law Vivian, who has her own family now, often visits with her kids. When she's around, the workload increases. This morning, when I heard she's coming back this weekend, I thought, oh, not again. And then the dreaded weekend arrives. I'd love to relax on my weekends off from work, but instead, I have to entertain Vivian's kids and prepare meals. While I'm busy, Vivian drops a bombshell on me. Eleanor, by the way, I'm getting divorced and moving back here with the kids next month. Just thought you should know. What? Are you serious? Do you have a problem with that? No, I understand it's tough for you. When are you moving back? As soon as possible. My sister-in-law is coming home with the kids. I'm initially surprised, but then I reconsider. Vivian used to be a homemaker, so she'll probably help around the house. That should ease my workload a bit. Although we're not particularly close, I'm looking forward to having less work and going about my days. But my optimism quickly fades away. Vivian, much like her mother, contributes nothing. She spends her days lounging around, watching TV, and snacking. She doesn't work, nor does she help with household chores. It turns out her neglect of domestic responsibilities was a significant factor in her divorce. Now, I'm left to do all the chores, including catering to her fussy kids and getting them ready for school. As time goes on, my workload at my job increases with a new project that demands more overtime and early starts. The house becomes progressively messier. Coming home to a dirty house is incredibly disheartening, yet everyone continues to ask, "When's dinner?" or "Why are you so slow?" To add to my frustration, I start receiving passive-aggressive comments from Vivian and my mother-in-law. Eleanor, the laundry is piling up. Just because you work doesn't mean you can slack off. They remark, oblivious to my own workload. Whenever I try to defend myself, Vivian interjects, "Talking back to your mother-in-law, you're quite bold, Eleanor. And you've been buying all the meals." That's not good for the kids. If you're home, can't you pitch in a bit? Then Mauricio chimes in, as a business owner, I'm providing for the family. You don't have to work. You're doing it out of selfishness, so fulfill your wifely duties perfectly. I'm left speechless, while they both stare at me as if their expectations are entirely reasonable. That night, I was seething with anger. I decided to confront Mauricio. I'm swamped with work, and neither your mom nor your sister is pitching in with the housework. You're not bad-mouthing my mom and sister, are you? Mauricio shoots me a glare. Surprised, I respond, no, that's not it. But I can't handle all the chores alone. Could you lend a hand? I'm busy running a business. You might not get it because you have an easy office job, but running a business is tough. Plus, isn't housework a wife's responsibility? Don't expect me to do it. Are you serious? Mauricio simply goes to bed, leaving me fuming. But then an idea strikes me. I come up with a plan. That night, before going to sleep, I quickly order some gadgets online. A few days later, a bunch of new appliances arrive. A washer, dryer, a cleaning robot, and kitchen appliances with automatic cooking functions. If no one's going to help me, I might as well make my chores easier with some handy gadgets. As the delivery guys are bringing in the washer, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law show up. You bought a new washer without consulting us. The old one still works, but it's outdated and this will make laundry quicker and simpler. What's all this? A cleaning robot and cooking appliances? Eleanor, come over here. I'm called into the living room where they're seated on the sofa, while I'm asked to sit on the floor. Mauricio is there too, sitting beside his mom, looking smug. What's happening? My mother-in-law shouts. What do you mean, what's happening? You've spent all our money on these lazy gadgets. What were you thinking? I thought they would help with the housework. Efficiency isn't everything. People rely too much on machines these days. My sister-in-law adds, exactly, Eleanor. And those are luxuries. The appliances we have are perfectly fine. You're just wasting money because Mauricio owns a business. She shoots me a glare, and Mauricio nods in agreement. But you're just trying to make your life easier. Can't you even handle housework properly? I wanted to retort, look who's talking, but I remained silent. Finally, perhaps frustrated by my lack of response, my mother-in-law snaps, if you can't handle housework, you should just leave. I stare at her in shock. She stares back, unyielding. We don't need you. Mauricio and I are fine without you. You always look tired and miserable. You're just a burden, my sister-in-law says with exasperation. Hold on, Mauricio. Your mom and sister are being too harsh. When I turn to Mauricio for support, he looks down at me and says, they're right. I don't need a wife who can't manage housework. I stare at Mauricio in disbelief, but he just smirks. I'm a business owner, and I have the right to spend my money as I please. I don't need a wife who spends it to make her life easier. Why would you say something like that? Besides, I've been getting along well with a young part-time worker. She's cute, unlike you. Pack your bags and leave. Stunned by Mauricio's words, all three of them start berating me, labeling me a failure as a wife. I clench my fists in anger. After all they've taken from me, they have the audacity to say this. Just wait. You'll regret this. But I maintain my composure and say, fine, I'll leave. Good. We'll be better off without you, my mother-in-law spits out. I rose silently and placed something on the table. Mauricio, let's get divorced, I said, sliding over a pre-filled divorce application. I had obtained it as a symbol of my exhaustion, tired of everything. Fine. I'll sign it. Don't regret it later, Mauricio responded, signing the papers. I packed my bags and left for a weekly apartment the same day. No one came to bid me farewell. I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall and rented a condo. At the same time, I accepted a promotion I had previously declined due to household responsibilities and became a department head. Finally able to focus on my career, which I had almost abandoned, I threw myself into my work with renewed determination. Delighted to be free from any hindrance, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief about a week after leaving. My former mother-in-law began calling after a year. but I was too occupied to entertain someone who had once deemed me worthless. I chose to ignore her calls. A year later, on a date off, she called again. Feeling it was time to address matters, I answered hesitantly, "Hello." "Ah, Eleanor, you finally answered. How could you ignore me for over a year? What do you want?" "Well, how have you been? Are you okay?" I responded bluntly to her probing. "I'm doing great, working hard in my own place. I've been promoted and my salary has increased. I'm living comfortably. Is that so? Would you consider returning?" Her tone held a hint of pleading, and I asked, cautiously, "Why now?" "We're in trouble." "We're running out of money," she confessed. I couldn't help but smirk as I replied, "So Mauricio's cafe isn't even making an $11,000 profit, huh? And neither you nor your daughter have jobs. Well, that explains it. Eleanor, did you know?" Of course I knew. Mauricio's cafe was barely making $800 a month in profit. Since I handled the finances, I was well aware. Mauricio, who acted like a big-shot business owner but neglected proper management and customer service, probably had no clue, but I did. I was the one handling all the accounting and inventory. "Why didn't you say something?" "I had no idea you were managing a big company and contributing so much to our living expenses." Yes, I was putting in over $3,000 a month. That's how everyone was able to live. I had been supplementing the family income with my own salary because I knew Mauricio's shop wasn't making much. He probably realized he couldn't make ends meet without my income only after I left. "Please, Eleanor, come back. By the way, what happened to Mauricio's shop?" Ignoring my former mother-in-law's plea, I informed her Mauricio's shop is going under next month. Even the part-time girl left him. That makes sense. With such sloppy management, he can't keep a business running, and he's too proud to do what needs to be done. No woman would want to be with a man like that. I chuckled, leaving my former mother-in-law speechless. "Can we wrap this up?" "I'm busy," I interjected. She hurriedly continued, "Also, the house has been a mess since you left." A mess? According to her, the house was in chaos because no one was doing any housework. It was cluttered, no one was cooking, so they had to buy food, and they couldn't even afford a new washing machine. "It would have been nice if you left those appliances," she remarked. "What do you mean? Those lazy appliances? And what's wrong with taking things that I pay for?" I shouldn't have said that, but I never expected the house to deteriorate like this just because no one was doing the chores. Isn't it strange that 3 adults can't manage the housework? I questioned, growing irritated. "What are your daughter and Mauricio doing?" She lowered her voice. "Well, Mauricio has been sulking at home all day, doing nothing since he found out his shop isn't making any money." "Really?" "He said he could do whatever he wanted with his money because he's a business owner. And Vivian refuses to work no matter how much I tell her. She doesn't do housework, and she even asks me for pocket money for herself and her kids." My pension is running out. "Really? Your daughter told me she didn't need me because she had you," I retorted icily. My former mother-in-law attempted to sway me once more. "Please, Eleanor, my pension isn't enough for the 3 of us anymore. I have no intention of returning to that house. Your children are quite dependent, aren't they?" She fell silent. Just as I was about to end the call, she persisted. "Eleanor, we'll change. Please come back. Let's all live happily together again." "Sure, happily with a worthless wife," I cut her off. She stumbled over her words but continued to plead. "I apologize for what I said. We're family. Help us. We can't even afford the property taxes anymore. We'll have to sell the house. I'm neither obligated nor inclined to assist you. Sort it out yourselves. Goodbye from your worthless wife," I said, disregarding her cries as I ended the call and blocked her number, savoring my coffee in my tidy apartment. I chuckled to myself. 3 months later, I happened to stroll past Mauricio's cafe. To my surprise, it had transformed into an empty storefront. It appeared that he had indeed closed down for good. Their family home was also listed as sold. When I bumped into a former neighbor, they informed me that the 3 of them had sold the house and relocated now residing in a cramped nearby apartment. They had become a constant nuisance in the neighborhood, often arguing and causing disturbances. Complaints were stacking up against them. It was disappointing to see that despite the opportunity to work hard and take care of their home independently, they hadn't, which was typical of them. I regarded their former residence with a sense of detachment and continued on my way. Since then, I've been fully immersed in my work. Recently, a sincere and hardworking colleague confessed his feelings for me, expressing admiration for my dedication to my job. We started dating with the intention of marriage. I believe my next marriage isn't too far off, and this time I'm eagerly anticipating embracing happiness.
Enough of this racket. Get out of here with that baby right now. My husband's angry shout pierced the silence of the night, driving us out into the chill of the changing season. With mornings growing colder and the threat of imminent rain, I felt the sting of desperation claw at my bones. I'm freezing. If we stay out here, we'll freeze to death, I muttered to myself, clutching our 3-month-old daughter tightly wrapped in her blanket. Despite my relentless knocking, there was no response from inside. Helpless, I hugged my crying child closer, and we stumbled on. Each step felt heavier as exhaustion settled in. Please let us in, I pleaded with the empty darkness, but the night offered no solace. Wandering aimlessly, I found myself sitting on a bench in the park, my body frozen to the core. Tears flowed freely as the events leading to our plight played out in my mind. How did we end up like this? My name is Olivia, 31 years old. Left orphaned by my parents' divorce in middle school, I was later devastated by my mother's tragic accident 2 years ago. Alone and desperate, Benjamin, a college classmate turned husband, became my anchor. His promises of support and love offered a glimmer of hope in my darkest days. But since learning about my pregnancy, Benjamin's demeanor shifted. His warmth turned to frost, his kindness replaced by indifference. Despite my morning sickness and struggles, his patience wore thin, leaving me to fend for myself. I hoped our daughter's birth would mend our fractured bond, but it only widened the chasm between us. His absence grew pronounced, his anger palpable. Every night echoed with his complaints, his resentment towards our crying baby tearing at my heart. This life, once filled with dreams of a happy family, now felt like a nightmare of loneliness and despair. My husband seemed to have an invisible shield against childcare responsibilities, always deflecting them with claims of being swamped with work. Even on his supposed days off, relaxation at home was a foreign concept to him, opting instead to gallivant around town from dawn till dusk. Left alone to tend to our baby, I found myself drained, both physically and emotionally. Each night, our daughter's cries intensified, mirroring my own mounting distress. One fateful evening, my husband's simmering frustration boiled over. "Get out of this house with that baby right now." His words cut through the air like a blade, leaving me stunned. I can't do that," I stammered, but before I could plead my case, we were cast out into the biting cold, devoid of essentials like keys, wallet, or phone. Helplessness washed over me as I clung to my daughter, wrapping her tightly in a blanket to shield her from the chill. With weary steps, we trudged on until exhaustion forced me to collapse on a park bench, my mind a whirlwind of despair. How had our once promising life devolved into this chaos? As if in response to my silent lament, my daughter's cries pierced the night air once more, a painful reminder of my failure. Just as the cold began to numb my senses, a voice shattered the silence. "Are you okay?" The concern in the stranger's voice momentarily transported me, as if my own mother had reached out from beyond. As I looked up, a woman stood before me, her eyes filled with compassion. "My husband kicked me out because of her baby's crying," I explained, the words heavy with shame. Without hesitation, the stranger extended a lifeline. "Come stay at my place," she offered, her kindness a beacon of hope in the darkness. As I hesitated, unsure whether to accept her generosity, she gently took my daughter into her arms, instantly calming her restless cries. "It's okay, don't worry. Let's go somewhere warm for the baby's sake." Entering her home felt like stepping into a sanctuary. My daughter was cocooned in a soft blanket, offered a comforting glass of hot milk, and cradled in the stranger's arms, her gentle snores filling the room with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in far too long. I couldn't believe it. No matter how hard I tried, the baby just wouldn't settle. It can be quite a challenge if you're not accustomed to it. As a recent grandmother, I found myself occasionally caring for the little one, perhaps explaining my newfound sensitivity to a baby's cries. Checking on the source of the noise, I found myself face to face with a woman, gentle smile easing the tension in the room. She seemed around the same age as my mother, radiating warmth that instantly put me at ease. "I'm sorry for intruding like this," I murmured, feeling a wave of gratitude for her understanding. "It's okay," she reassured me, her kind eyes reflecting empathy. "We should help each other out in times of need. Do you need a ride home? Do you live nearby?" I hesitated, memories of being cast out still fresh in my mind. "No, I might just get thrown out again," I confessed, my voice faltering. Without missing a beat, she offered her hospitality. Her kindness moved me to tears once more. "Thank you so much," I whispered, introducing myself. "My name is Olivia." As the conversation flowed, a sudden realization dawned on me. "Wait a minute, isn't your baby's name Anne?" Her nod confirmed my suspicion. "Yes, but how did you?" It turns out, this woman was Jackson, my husband's direct superior. She had sent us a gift when Anne was born, hence her familiarity with our daughter's name. The coincidence caught me off guard, and I regretted airing my grievances about my husband to her. "We're always grateful for your help," I said, my mind racing with newfound information. "The thing is, my husband has been busy with work lately, and he seems quite tired." Jackson's response stunned me. "That can't be right. Your husband has been on parental leave for the past 2 months. My heart skipped a beat as her words sank in. "But he says he goes to work every day," I protested, confusion clouding my thoughts. "He even said he has work tomorrow." "It's a holiday. The office will be closed," Jackson explained, her tone tinged with concern. "I wonder what he's up to." I was blindsided by the revelation that my husband, whom I believed was tirelessly working, was actually on vacation. However, the pieces of the puzzle were finally starting to fall into place. I couldn't shake off the sense of anticipation that seemed to linger on the days my husband was supposed to be at work. Ever since I became pregnant, his behavior had taken a noticeable shift, leaving me with a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. As I pondered how to investigate further, Jackson suggested a bold idea. "Why don't you check his social media?" she proposed, gesturing towards a computer in the corner of the room. I accepted her offer gratefully and began scrolling through my husband's online presence. What I discovered left me reeling in shock. A trove of photos featuring him and another woman, seemingly inseparable. They looked like a couple. "That's Ava," Jackson explained, her voice tinged with sympathy. "She worked at our company for only 3 months before recently quitting." The pieces fell into place, confirming my worst fears. Though I had harbored suspicions, the reality of my husband's affair hit me harder than I had anticipated. Do you know her address, her contact information?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. But Jackson hesitated, her concern evident. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned her name. It's personal information, and I can't disclose it," she replied gently, offering me solace in my moment of vulnerability. As I deflated, Jackson extended her support. "I'll do everything I can to help with anything else," she assured me. But my attention was drawn back to the screen, where a series of photos showcased my husband and his mistress living a life of luxury, dining at the prestigious Paris hotel. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. With no income during my maternity leave and our combined savings dwindling, there was no way he could afford such extravagance. "No way. This can't be happening," I whispered, my heart heavy with disbelief. With trembling hands, I logged into my bank account online, hoping against hope for a different outcome. But what I found only confirmed my worst fears. My savings of $250,000 vanished. The inheritance I received after my mother's tragic car accident had been cut in half, leaving me stunned and motionless for what felt like an eternity. "What's wrong?" Jackson's concerned voice broke through my daze. "My husband has been using my savings without my permission," I confessed, the betrayal cutting deep. "I have reserved those funds for our daughter's future, trusting my husband to keep them safe." But as I reflected on recent events, the pieces began to fall into place. Leaving my debit card with him during my hospitalization for childbirth had been a mistake. He hadn't visited me once during that time, and the first withdrawal from my savings coincided with the day I handed him the card. I had never doubted his integrity, believing he had locked it away securely. "I can't forgive him," I murmured, the weight of his deception crushing my spirit. "He's been using my beloved mother's inheritance without my permission." Determined to expose his deceit, I accepted Jackson's offer of a digital camera. The next day, we watched from the car as my husband, wearing a self-satisfied smirk, left our house without a second thought for our daughter and me. His carefree demeanor grated against my raw emotions, fueling my resolve. As expected, his car eventually pulled up at the Paris hotel, his mistress in tow. With practiced ease, they strolled into the restaurant, oblivious to the pain they caused. Entrusting our daughter to Jackson's care, I took a seat behind them, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. "I've had enough of Olivia's stubbornness," my husband's callous words echoed in my ears. "Finally kicked her out last night. Now she's filed for divorce. I'll get the compensation from her mother's accident, and maybe even alimony." "You're despicable," Jackson retorted, her disgust palpable. "Your wife doesn't even realize you're after her money. You've been using her vulnerability since her mother passed away, but having a child was an unexpected obstacle." The shock of his admission left me speechless, my mind reeling with disbelief. Oblivious to my turmoil, my husband swaggered towards the elevator with his mistress, the key to their hotel room dangling from his fingers. As I stealthily followed them, even though it was just a fleeting moment before the elevator arrived, they embraced and began to kiss. Despite bracing myself, witnessing the affair unfold before my eyes was agonizing. A shiver ran down my spine as my husband's callous words echoed in my ears. "This is a pre-celebration for kicking Olivia out. Let's have a blast today." Unable to find my voice, I watched helplessly as the elevator doors closed, swallowing them up and leaving me behind. Frustration and sadness overwhelmed me, rendering me unable to stand. Collapsing to my knees, I felt a profound shift within me. The grief that had gripped my heart began to morph into a simmering desire for revenge. Betrayal of this magnitude was too cruel to ignore. I couldn't simply let it slide. That evening, timing my return to coincide with my husband's arrival home from work, I made my way back to the house. "Whoa, look who's back," he greeted me with mock surprise. "I'm sorry. I'll do whatever you say from now on. Please let me back in the house," I pleaded, masking my rising anger behind a facade of submission. It was time to tighten the noose around him, to play the part of the obedient wife and bide my time. "Fine. From now on, I'm not giving you any living expenses. Do whatever you want," he declared, his arrogance undiminished. Without a word of dissent and without broaching the subject of divorce, I made it clear that I was onto him. Despite his continued despicable attitude, I remained resolute, laying the groundwork for the vengeance that simmered beneath the surface. Enduring my husband's deceit, I persisted in my search for evidence of his affair, scouring the house for any clue. Among his belongings, I discovered a trove of receipts for hotels and meals tucked away in his suit pockets, but alone, they felt like feeble proof. It wasn't until I delved into social media under the woman's name that her true identity was unveiled 2 weeks later. With all preparations in place, I found myself once again at the infamous Paris hotel. There they were, my husband and his mistress, brazenly indulging in dinner and public displays of affection, just as they had done before. Mustering my resolve, I approached them as they prepared to board the elevator. "What are you doing here?" my husband demanded, his tone defensive. "Why are you here?" "I am obviously here for a work meeting," I countered sharply, seizing the moment to confront him. Quickly disentangling himself from his mistress, my husband looked guilt-ridden, attempting to flee. "That's odd. Today's a day off, isn't it?" I pressed, my voice cutting through the tension. Turning in surprise, he stumbled upon a revelation. "What, Jackson? You're supposed to be on parental leave, right? How come you're working?" Caught off guard by my unexpected presence with his boss, my husband's feeble excuses faltered. Meanwhile, the mistress, identified as Ava, appeared uneasy and uncertain, her gaze fixed downward. Sensing the scrutiny of onlookers, I proposed a change of scenery. "Since we're drawing attention, let's move this to the room you guys booked. Unless you want me to scatter these photos around here. Is that okay?" I brandished the damning evidence, leaving my husband reeling. In a desperate bid to escape, he grabbed my arm and pulled me into the elevator. But Jackson intercepted, apprehending the fleeing mistress and bringing her along. "Why are you with Jackson?" my husband demanded, bewildered by the unexpected turn of events. "Since the day you kicked me out, I had nowhere to go. Jackson heard our daughter crying in the park and invited me in," I explained, seizing the opportunity to expose his hypocrisy. As we entered the room, a tense silence descended, marking the beginning of a confrontation long overdue. Dumping all the evidence onto the table, I watched as shock rippled across their faces. "What are these photos?" my husband stammered, his voice betraying a hint of panic. I was here the day after you kicked me out of the house. It was shocking, but I took these as evidence of your affair, I explained, my tone steely with resolve. That's low, that's my line, my husband retorted, his attempt to deflect criticism falling flat in the face of my accusations. His silence spoke volumes, but I pressed on. I'm aware you used my savings without my consent. That money was a legacy from my mother, I continued, my voice unwavering. That's our shared property. I don't see an issue with me using it, he countered, his arrogance grating against my sense of injustice. It's not shared property. It's mine and mine alone, I insisted, refusing to back down. You will return the $120,000 you used. Come on, we're married. Let's not get into such tedious matters, he dismissed, his indifference fueling my frustration. Exhausted by his callousness, I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers, slamming them onto the table with finality. I'm fed up with you. Fill out these divorce papers immediately. That's a leap, don't you think? Didn't I hear you say you wanted me to bring up divorce? He protested, his attempt to deflect blame falling on deaf ears. I played a recording of a conversation we had during a previous meal, his hurtful words reverberating throughout the room. Give me a break, not a chance to think. You approached me just for my money, his voice echoed, each syllable a painful reminder of his betrayal. It all became clear after I heard our conversation from that day. That's why you became so cold all of a sudden, I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. There's a lot to the situation. I don't want to hear any excuses or lies, I continued, my resolve unyielding. Pay me $20,000 for the affair, $10,000 for all the times you mistreated me, $120,000 for the money you took from my savings, and $110,000 for child support until our daughter turns 20. That's a total of $260,000 in one lump sum. What mistreatment? He protested, his voice tinged with desperation. But there was no denying the truth of his actions. You kicked me and our daughter out of the house in the middle of the night and didn't provide living expenses, I countered, my voice unwavering. Clearly caught off guard, he attempted to salvage the situation. Just calm down. Let's talk this out, he pleaded, his tone bordering on pathetic. But there was no room for negotiation. Don't mock me, and don't think you're out of this either. I'll be seeking $20,000 in damages from you too, I retorted, my gaze unwavering. Turning to face his mistress, I could see the color drain from her face. I have to pay too, of course. But in return, I'm divorcing him, so you two can be open about your relationship. That should be a relief, right? I remarked, my tone cutting. As the reality of his situation sank in, my husband's desperation reached a fever pitch. Please spare me this one time. I'll be a good husband, I promise, he begged, his tears and snot a sorry sight. But his pitiful display only served to strengthen my resolve. Turning my back on him, I took the house keys and card case from his bag. I sold the house that was in my name. Jackson reported everything to the company, and it seems you're going to be fired, I informed him, my voice devoid of emotion. As we left the room, I knew it was the end of an era. I didn't want to see my husband ever again, so I arranged for a divorce through a lawyer. I reflected, my mind already moving forward. I demanded compensation for the divorce, the money he had squandered, and child support. With his parents furious and his future uncertain, my husband's downfall was complete. Since he couldn't pay all the compensation in one go, his father forced him to work in a mine, I concluded, my voice tinged with finality. Leaving behind the remnants of my old life, my daughter and I embarked on a new journey. We bought a small apartment and started our new life, I recounted, a sense of relief washing over me. The moment we started living here, my daughter's night crying stopped completely. Grateful for Jackson's support and the opportunity for a fresh start, I knew that together, my daughter and I would build a home filled with happiness and love.